We are going to make a start. So, hello everyone. I'm Rachel Bevan, Director of Statistics Division at ESCAP based here in Bangkok. And it's my pleasure to be able to welcome you all to this side event on, which hopefully you should all know what it's on, but it's on the 2024 review of civil registration and vital statistics decade in Asia and the Pacific. And we're specifically looking today around the issue of digitalization as a key enabler to get everyone in the picture. So it's my pleasure to be able to welcome everyone, both here in the room, but also online as well. So hopefully you can all see us and hear us okay. Let me also start by taking this opportunity to say a huge thank you to our partners who we have here today. As ever, we are extremely glad to be working with you all. So I know we've got the World Bank who are online, we've got UNDP and Vital Strategies here, and we're going to hear more from all of them today at this side event, which we're really looking forward to. So this is a really good time for us to be doing this side event. One, because it's at the end of our kind of ESCAP Commission, where we've been looking really at the whole issues around digital transformation, and the agenda on CRVS is so linked to that. But also it's a really good time for us to be looking at this because of the work that we're going in terms of civil registration and vital statistics. So back in 2014, in recognition of the role of civil registration and vital statistics and the role that that plays in supporting development governments and development partners, they really came together in 2014 to actually concentrate our efforts on what needed to be done to improve civil registration and vital statistics systems. So back in 2014, so 10 years ago now, partners came together to agree a shared vision for the region, which was that by 2024, all people in Asia and the Pacific would benefit from universal and responsive CRVS systems that facilitate the realization of their rights and support good governance, health, and development. So since then, countries and development partners have really made huge, significant efforts to move towards this joint vision. And I know we had the second ministerial event back in November 2021. That was my second week in the job. And was a great introduction. Sadly, it was virtual. So I'm very pleased that the next ministerial will be in person. And that will be here in Bangkok in June 2025. So the third ministerial conference will really give us that opportunity to look at what we've been doing in terms of all the hard work that's gone on, but also to really look at those challenges, but also, of course, to celebrate the achievements that we've made. So to help us in that preparation for the ministerial event next year, we are doing a review of where we are in terms of this decade and in terms of all the different activities that we've set out. So my colleague's going to give a bit more detail on that during this side event. But I think what we know already is that although significant progress has been made, we've still got a long way to go. Universal registration of vital events is yet to be achieved. And we know that there's still millions of people across the region who are actually born and then they die without any legal tender of their existence. So no records actually exist on them, which we're calling, that's been termed the scandal of invisibility. And I think it's very easy to kind of almost forget sometimes. We just look at the numbers, but we forget that behind every single one of these numbers, there's a real person. And it really makes a difference to their lives. It makes so much difference in terms of what services they can actually access and across all areas of their life. And we have heard a lot throughout this commission event this week about digital transformation, about digital services. And we know that CRVS is actually one of those areas of government service where there are huge opportunities that digital services can really provide. We know that digitalization is a real key enabler of building sustainable, inclusive and resilient CRVS systems. And that, again, is very much also a real backbone for the whole of kind of e-government services. And we're seeing quite a lot of countries as well who are actually implementing national ID cards and establishing digital legal identity systems as part of their kind of digital public infrastructure. And establishing that link then between the CRVS system and the national ID systems is a really positive development. But it's also important that the way in which that's done needs to ensure that personal information is, of course, kept safe. But we also need to ensure that the systems that do exist are interoperable to actually help those linkages to make those systems work together. And we need to ensure as well that the systems are comprehensive and that we don't exclude certain groups of the population, particularly not when we're talking about moving into areas of digital government. We need to think about the vulnerable groups who may be very excluded and don't actually have access to these services. So whatever we do, we need to make sure we really do pay attention to the groups of the most vulnerable populations. So at this side event, we're going to be discussing the importance of digitalization to achieve that universal registration of vital events. It's also going to highlight the ongoing efforts of countries to advance the digitalization of simplified and proactive CRVS business processes as part of government-wide digital transformation efforts. And we, of course, are very pleased that you've joined us here today, but also online to help us to actually understand more about that integration of CRVS systems with national ID systems across the region, but also to understand their importance in terms of building digital public infrastructure. So let me just finish by saying, again, a huge thank you to all our partners for the ongoing collaboration. And thank you for everyone here at this event. And I'm now going to hand over to our moderator for today. Petra Nemius is our Chief of Population and Social Statistics section. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for those opening remarks. Yeah, as Rachel's highlighted, digitalization for CRVS systems, it's there's many opportunities, but there's also some significant challenges, and we have 4 fantastic speakers who are very much at the coalface of implementing CRVS systems in a wide variety of countries in the region, and they'll be able to provide some perspectives about how we can take advantage of the opportunities and also address the many challenges to really leverage digitalization for improving CRVS systems. So I'll move over to our first speaker. And that's Roman Santon, who has been leading CRVS-focused activities in the Asia-Pacific region since 2016, providing technical assistance and collaborating with senior government officials in countries as varied as Papua New Guinea, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and others. He's contributed to strengthening CRVS systems by streamlining birth and death notifications, enhancing health sector and civil register connections, and improving cause of death reporting, which is really key to understanding a country's health trends. Roman has spent 15 years in Southeast Asia working on public health, HIV/AIDS, malnutrition, and post-disaster response. Currently, he leads their Asian Pacific regional team at Vital Strategies, providing strategic and technical assistance under the Bloomberg Philanthropies Data for Health initiative. And previously, he coordinated regional programs for MAGNA, a humanitarian organization focused on medical and nutritional aid to vulnerable populations. So Roman, over to you.
Thank you, Petra. And thanks, everyone. Thanks to our colleagues and partners at ESCAP for the opportunity to present during this side event today. So today my presentation will be focusing on achieving inclusive digital transformation with CRVS business process improvement, using a process-centric approach to improve CRVS and CRVS system and digitalize processes as part of digital public infrastructure. Next slide, please. Yes, okay. So we will talk about getting everyone in the picture with CRVS and identity system, and move to a crucial conversion between civil registration and vital statistics and digital public infrastructure. And we will give a brief overview of this process-centric CRVS improvement framework, which is a guidelines to strengthen CRVS business processes. So we all know that the CRVS decade is aiming at getting everyone in the picture, but how to kind of get everyone actually in the picture? Well, as we all know, the legal identity enable people to take part in society and access public and private services. And as per the UN Legal Identity Agenda, to be in the picture, everyone needs a legal identity, and this legal identity is provided mainly at birth through birth registration and the issuance of a birth certificate by an authorized civil registration authority, and retired by the issuance of a death certificate upon registration of death. And as per the UN principle and recommendation, legal identity is based on civil registration, which is by definition continuous, permanent, compulsory, universal, and confidential. So this universality aspect, particularly coupled with the continuous and permanent and compulsory aspect, should help us to reach universal birth registration and death registration, and subsequently providing everyone with a legal identity. So here is illustration of how civil registration follows us throughout our entire life, from birth to death, and through the various events that can occur alongside individual journeys with graduation, employment, marriage, divorce, retirement. While the ID system and the fact of owning a legal identity enables to access multiple services such as education, health, social protection, taxation, voter registration, banking services, and so on and so forth. And coupled with health services will also allow to produce vital statistics which are critical for policy and decision making, as well as for adjustment of service deliveries. So through enabling digital transformation with digital public infrastructure, on the other hand, those are the networks that are essential for people to connect with each other and access the range of goods and services, part of which we mentioned earlier. And while ID is a key function of the DPI, the interlinkages with CRVS can ensure that that the system is continuous by providing this continuous flow that is required to maintain the overall database and to have up-to-date data about birth and death, ensuring the accuracy, like the unique truth around the information about each identity, promote inclusiveness by, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that civil registration is meant to be universal, and of course improve the efficiency of the collection of the information, because the aim is to collect once but utilize multiple times. So next slide, please. The digitalization of the CRVS system is a critical component of digital transformation and digital public infrastructure. But to ensure that we achieve safe, inclusive, and secure digital public infrastructure system, we need to have like functional CRVS system that are also digitalized. And there are several essential steps that needs to be taken to ensure that we achieve a robust CRVS system that will be leveraged for this purpose. And firstly, it's important to establish strong institutional arrangement, have good governance and coordination around CRVS and ID system. You have, depending on the country, different institutional arrangement where sometimes the CRVS and the ID system are implemented by different ministries, or they are implemented by the same ministries but by separate departments, or sometimes CRVS and ID can be implemented by the same entity. So depending on that, you are facing various challenge of coordination and governance that needs to be looked into and well coordinated. Of course, having a conducive legal and regulatory framework that enables privacy and right-driven data exchange is also essential. And conducting legal review and legal reform is also extremely important while working towards achieving CRVS improvement. One of the also essential work that needs to be done is to look into business processes and ensure that we have efficient and inclusive business processes that capture all vital events. And we will be talking a bit after around this CRVS improvement framework that can help to achieve that. And finally, it's important to implement and sustain all of this system to have secured, adequate, and sustained financing for the CRVS system. And that needs to also look into as those plans are being developed. So what is a business process, and what is business process that we are trying to improve, right? So it's simply a chain of event activities and decision organized logically to accomplish a certain goal, and where there are inputs all along the way for every processes, and they are performed by different actors to produce some output. So if it's not well coordinated, if it's not well planned, it might not produce the desired output, or it might take longer to produce the desired output. And we are looking into this and this efficiency to try to improve them to achieve universal and timely CRVS systems. So because often so the actor at the end of the supply chain doesn't really know the details of the entire process, while it's not always clear for the various actors along the way what the exact output they are working towards and what it is for. So it's very important that we have this overview of this process and look into every single step with the aim to improve it. To achieve this, with several partners, including ESCAP, of course, and under the Bloomberg Philanthropy Data for Health Initiative funding support, a CRVS system improvement framework has been developed. The link to download the full document is displayed here on this slide. And this process-centric approach to CRVS system strengthening will enable customizable, multi-sectoral, participatory, and country-led and owned approach to CRVS system strengthening. So it's very participative through the establishment of a core team that is led by a government stakeholder, and the framework can be used by those government stakeholders independently or with support from development partners. It provides an analytical framework that will help to analyze, assess, and redesign the CRVS system through business process mappings and various use of key performance indicator to improve those processes. You have an example of a business process map below. And of course, it will promote the digitalization of efficient and inclusive processes. We all know that technology cannot solve everything, and that is very essential to really look into process and improve processes before starting the journey to digitalization. Next slide, please. So with this, it's also to summarize a little bit that we promote the fact that CRVS is foundational to digital public infrastructure development, and that based on particularly the principle that CRVS system by definition enable everyone to be in the picture thanks to the universal component of it, and integrating CRVS into the fabric of digital transformation and digital public infrastructure development is essential, as it will foster inclusive and right-based identity ecosystem that will benefit both the individual and the societies at large. It will ensure efficient public and private sector delivery, service delivery. So it's definitely an asset for government, but also for private entities to be able to leverage this, and will, of course, accelerate progress towards the sustainable development goals. As civil registration is an or the accurate single source of truth about legal identity, and it will reduce risk and enable transformative potential of digital public infrastructure. To finish, a robust and complete ID system can be built and sustained only with an inclusive, digitalized, and efficient CRVS system. As more countries design and implement digital public infrastructure, rethinking CRVS system with a DPI lens and vice versa could yield numerous societal benefits in years to come. Furthermore, it is a strategic imperative for building a more connected, efficient, and equitable digital future for everyone. So it's essential that knowledge exchange between the CRVS and DPI thought leaders and experts happen to provide critical insight to move the dialogues and action forward. With that, I would like to thank everyone for your attention, and thank particularly my colleague who helped me to put this presentation together, especially my colleague Martin Bracci, who's been very helpful in streamlining this presentation. Thank you very much.
So much, Roman, and we're going to take questions at the end of the first three presentations. So if you have any questions for Roman, please remember them, and we'll leave some time for Q&A shortly. For those online, also feel free to add any questions in the chat, which we'll be monitoring. So our next speaker is Belinda Heltishweo. Okay, sorry if I got that wrong. She's a Monitoring and Evaluation Officer for the Business and Human Rights in Asia portfolio at the United Nations Development Programme. Previously, she coordinated the Women, Peace and Security Initiative at UNDP, promoting women's rights and security in many Asian countries. We're very pleased she's come here to present, and she's a trained lawyer, and she'll be presenting from a human rights perspective. And Belinda's worked extensively in Africa and Asia, focusing on inclusive governance, human rights, youth engagement, peace building, and gender equality, including supporting the strengthening of CRVS systems. Her career includes roles at the International Criminal Court, the Judicial Service Commission of Zimbabwe, and various civil society organizations. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in French Language and Literature, a Bachelor of Laws, and a Master of Laws specializing in international law. Belinda, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra. That was a lovely introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Belinda, and it's truly an honor to be here with you all today speaking about this critical issue. Before we go to the next slide, I just wanted to maybe break from protocol a little bit and mention what keeps drawing me to this work, and it's really that vision to get everyone in the picture, And I think as long as we have that as our in our horizon, as our focus, we are on our way there. Often inequalities, human rights violation, etc., happen because not everybody is in the picture. So I just wanted to break from the presentation to just say that quick note. Next slide, please. So today's presentation, I will say, it's really an honor for me to be here representing UNDP, but I really want to express gratitude to our partners, including our colleagues at ESCAP, not only for collaboration at this event, but also ongoing partnership on UN Legal Identity Agenda Task Force, which UNDP is co-chair, and UNDP remains committed to offering unified, effective support to member states. Now, in terms of the presentation, it's really divided into 5 parts. The first is just a bit of an introduction, and I'm going to try and keep it short so as not to repeat the lovely presentation from Romain. But it will really start with how digital legal identity systems are an enabler for the SDGs. Moving on to the governance challenges around digitization of CRVS, and related to this, the operational challenges. The middle section is really, I think, a testament to the hard work of our colleagues at the country offices, and would love to share some of their experiences from Samoa, Sri Lanka, and Vanuatu, and end off with some key messages. Next slide, please. So on the first question of potential, 15 years ago, we were talking about the potential of digitalization, the potential. It kept coming up again and again. Now we are talking about the tangible impact. And now we are crucially, what was in the abstract now has concrete data. And what you see on this slide here is some data from our partners at World Bank. As you see, digital identity could boost GDP growth by 3 to 13%. So really having a tangible impact on the populations we serve. However, the digital divide remains a key risk for populations being left behind. 850 million people currently lack legal identity, with women facing significant barriers to accessing legal identity services. The question now is, how do we narrow this gap to make sure that we get everybody in the picture? Next slide, please. So always somebody who likes to be thorough, and my colleagues feel the same. We started with the question, why? I think the answer is simple. Countries that have digitalized legal identity ecosystems, we see in those countries, we see easier access to public service, improved efficiency of public service, reduced public expenditures due to reduced corruption and fraud. Some people always ask, what do we start with? Well, I just want to take a key from Roman's slide, which is, data sharing between government through digital means has been a very crucial step in reliable authentication using technology such as biometric systems. Nevertheless, there are still some tangible human rights risks that we need to be aware of as we go through this journey. And many of you are already familiar with them. Risks of misuse of personal information, mass surveillance, etc. Now, it's crucial that we know these risks so that at least we are able to mitigate them effectively as we move on to the next step. Next slide, please. Now, keeping these risks that you saw on the previous slide in mind, an undervalued but critical factor in the success of digital legal identity ecosystem is linkage with CRVS. Again, an element that Roman graciously went over and clarified. Many have heard the term digital public infrastructure, certainly in this room and in the MS Teams room. These are the building blocks built on open standards which provide access to public and private services on a societal scale. But at the heart of DPI lies national IDs and digital IDs, which serve as a gateway for services across DPI. However, in many countries, national IDs and digital IDs operate in silos, unlinked from CRVS, resulting in separate and multiple databases. Now, the tangible impact on society is that many are denied public services, and in some cases, rights holders are unable to seek remedy where they justifiably would have had the opportunity to do so. Next slide, please. Technicalities aside, the siloed approach also causes some tangible governance challenges. After all, in the digital ecosystem, there is no single source of truth for an individual's identity. As seen, the digital ecosystem works collectively. right? In practical terms, that means that one person could have multiple ID documents with different names and different leads. Now, Petra has introduced me wonderfully as Belinda, but I could be Sarah, I could be Ying, using myself as an example. And to borrow a very difficult name that I thought of as we're preparing these talking points, Tamsanga. I could be Tamsanga from my home country. But this leads to very, very practical issues, which include undermining security, corruption, and overall waning the trust, the public trust that populations have with their governments. Next slide, please. Now, reasons for the lack of linkage or the siloed approach. Now, they vary from country to country. No one country is the same. However, a ringing refrain that we hear too often is CRVS is too complicated and national IDs simpler. As you see from this slide, yes, there are many issues, but it is important to note that one's identity at birth and let me say that again, that one's identity starts at birth, and only with CRVS do we have a truly universal and inclusive system to really kind of bring that slide together. Next slide, please. Now, linked to the governance challenges, also operational challenges. An important challenge that we need to really note is we often see the ability of governments to choose the right to digital solutions and maintain them over time is difficult for most. Since all countries have different legal frameworks that govern CRVS, each digital technology has to be unique. Based on the capacities of the government, especially considering if the government has sufficient capacity and budget to maintain it, it needs to choose whether it wants to develop its own software or buy from vendors, etc. And if the choice is made and procurement is involved, a competitive procurement process that considers not only cost, but long-term maintenance should also be followed, and also other elements come into play, such as the use of open source vendors, etc. Now, we have a bit of an overview of, what some of the governance and operational challenges are. What is UNDP doing? And I think here we take a leaf from country officers who have graciously shared some of their stories. For example, next slide, please. In Vanuatu. Now, here we have a project that started to strengthen the accuracy and integrity of voter registration by linking it to the civil registry. UNDP supported in the design, planning, and data collection, and stakeholder engagement, legislative reforms, etc., and the development of new integrated identity management system. That full sentence is a bit of a mouthful, so I'll say it in a shorter way. It's called the MAKE model. By April 2022, 93% of the population will be was registered and have received their national identity cards. UNDP worked with ESCAP teams to improve business processes of the Vanuatu CRVS system, which is now incorporated into an updated digital CRVS. Next slide, please. Now, in Samoa, in 2023, UNDP received a request from the government of Samoa to digitize its CRVS system. After consulting with various stakeholders, including mothers, pregnant women, health workers, UNDP piloted a digital transformation project that allowed remote birth registration at the community level. This increased birth registration as a first result, but also we supported the government in development of a prototype of a digital CRVS solution. The open source based CRVS solution was selected in consultation with the government and a vendor through a an international competitive process. And here again, we see transparency, accountability, really the key tenets of human rights being incorporated and accelerated through the uptake of digital solutions. In the second phase of the project, we are currently planning how to cover the remaining functions, but we are off to a good start. And then finally, in Sri Lanka, in 2024, UNDP Sri Lanka worked with WHO to launch a joint program to digitize CRVS to strengthen legal identity ecosystem, which is currently largely paper-based. Sri Lanka currently has a digital e-population register, but this program will upgrade the system along with the infrastructure to issue digitally verifiable birth certificates. Crucially, promote interoperability, my apologies, by supporting the process of issuing unique identification numbers at birth. As the project has only recently started, the team is currently planning a comprehensive assessment and mapping. And you can see the key objectives on the screen. However, just wanted to quickly note that what we are mapping is Sri Lanka's legal identity system, ICT infrastructure, government capacity, but also a human rights assessment among marginalized communities. You'll recall in earlier slides, we mentioned every country is different. So these mappings go a long way into really understanding where the key bottlenecks are and how to resolve them. We look forward to working with our partners on this and many issues. Now, finally, to just some key messages. Firstly, is that linking CRVS with digital legal identity and overall DPI is key in successful digital transformation of government. There's no way around it. Secondly, for an inclusive rights-based digital legal identity system, the governance of digital legal identity systems needs to be considered in the design phase. Often we think about it in the middle or towards the end. Really at the beginning, at the conception, is where this needs to be considered. For example, there are some tools that we've hyperlinked there, model governance framework for legal identity, but also we're currently drafting the data protection legislation and a study of regional frameworks. Third, for sustainability of a digital legal identity system, an impartial and comprehensive assessment for the selection of software solution is critical, in line with procurement principles to ensure transparency, to ensure accountability. UNDP is co-chair of the UN Interagency Group on Legal Identity Agenda Task Force and stands ready to assist member states. And I really just wanted to recommit that as the last key message. And thank you so much for your kind attention, and look forward not only to today's conversation, but for many more that we will have over to achieve the vision of making sure that everyone is in the picture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Belinda, for that presentation. We move on now to our next presenter, and that is Jonathan Maskell, who is a Senior Program Officer with the Identification for Development, ID4D, initiative of the World Bank. He's responsible for supporting digital ID and civil registration financing and technical assistance projects in East Asia and the Pacific, South Asia, and East Africa, as well as contributing to ID4D's global thought leadership, convening, and advocacy. Before joining ID4D in 2016, he was a consultant on identification, CRVS, in the Asia Pacific region. And he actually started his career here with us at ESCAP. So we're very pleased it's come full circle and you're now presenting here. He holds a Master of Arts in International Political Economy and Bachelor of International Business. Now, Jonathan is actually going to fly by the seat of his pants, and he has no PowerPoint presentation. He said he's going to be presenting reactively. So we're interested to see what the reaction will be. So Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Petra, and thank you to Rachel and ESCAP for the invitation to speak. As Petra mentioned, I started my work in this field at ESCAP, working on this initiative, and I'm really, on a personal level and also on a professional level, very pleased to see it being so successful with a lot of momentum around the region. I'm joining you from Jakarta, where I'm now based. Selamat siang to everybody. Here in Indonesia, actually, I'm the co-team leader for our ID and civil registration project, which is investing more than $250 million in the development of the system here, including to close the remaining small coverage gaps and to make the existing systems more efficient, more secure, and to support more and better service delivery. I guess I'm as the World Bank, we have a number of ways that we support countries on this agenda. We have our Identification for Development initiative, or ID4D for short, which is a cross-sectoral initiative that brings together our health, data, governance, finance, social protection, digital, gender, legal teams that work across the World Bank Group and IFC, our private sector arm, to support countries to develop not just ID systems, but also civil registration systems as well. And then on the VS aspect, we have various other initiatives. And I see Rike on the screen. Hi, Rike. It's so lovely to see you. Rike is my ex-boss. Sorry, I had to say that. So we have we also have the health sector angle and the data angle, where our colleagues who works with Ministry of Health and National Statistical Offices do various types of engagement. So, for example, here in Indonesia, all three angles are covered: registration, health, and statistics. In the ESCAP region, we have activities in around 15 countries. I mentioned Indonesia, also the Philippines, Vietnam, Samoa, Kiribati, Tonga, Sri Lanka, Maldives, just to mention some of them. Now, to react to the presentations, I think Roman and Belinda did a phenomenal job, and I would echo a lot of the messages that they have. For example, Roman mentioned that CRVS is very much part of digital public infrastructure. It certainly can be. The concept is that these are systems that enable other systems, and CRVS is very much the definition of that when it's done well. The data on births and deaths are very critical, not just for producing statistics, but also for social protection schemes, for ID systems, and education, healthcare, etc. Also, Belinda spoke a lot about the rights angle, which is extremely important for this agenda. The right to not just have an identity, to a nationality, and various other aspects that flow from having a birth, marriage certificate, or for a family or friends to have a death certificate is very important. I just want to add 4 messages. The first is, and these are very supportive of what's been mentioned before me. The first is that digitalization should not be seen as simply making what is currently manual and paper-based digital. For example, publishing a form as a PDF on a website is not really, that's digitization, but not digitalization or transformation. The point of digital transformation is to use technology to make processes faster, easier, and cheaper for the government, but also for the citizens as end users. Because if you're simply digitizing what is inefficient now, you will just have an inefficient digital system. Right, and so what Roman was saying about business process reviews, and Belinda mentioned, for example, the work in I think it was Samoa or Vanuatu about Vanuatu on business process review is very important. So digital technologies should be seen as an enabler, not as an end in themselves. And as part of that, frankly, going full digital is not possible. Even in Singapore, one of the most digital countries on earth, they say we go digital first, but not digital only. There's always got to be analog and physical channels for people, whether they're the elderly, persons with disability, persons with less literacy, or frankly, people who don't want to use digital services. They should still have analog channels to access. The second is that in our experience, because as the World Bank, our main counterparts in countries are obviously ministries of finance and ministries of planning, where we see the most traction for investments in developing civil registration systems. Frankly, it is as part of a broader ID ecosystem reform or modernization, because the economic argument of investing in continuous birth, death, marriage registration to ensure the sustainability of an ID system is a very compelling one. The production of statistics, whilst very important, the benefits are very much downstream and indirect. And so I would encourage everyone to see the linkages between ID and civil registration as mutually reinforcing and not as a zero-sum game. In other words, the whole is greater than the sum of all the parts. The third message is, and this was mentioned a few times already, is with respect to personal data protection. This is extremely important because we are obviously dealing with sensitive personal data. There's often a misconception that ID system privacy risk than civil registration systems, because a lot of ID systems collect biometrics, and certainly there are a lot of risks involved in that. But if you look at the recommendations from the UN Statistics Division on what needs to be collected as part of CRVS, including ethnicity, religion, those kinds of characteristics, very important from a statistical perspective, but also could come at great harm if misused for discriminatory purposes. And so it's very important to treat these equally with a high standard when it comes to personal data protection conditions. Finally, this fourth message, it just came to me while Belinda was talking about Vanuatu, because Vanuatu is a very good example of a very simple system that works very, very well in that context. And the best ID systems that we see, and civil registration systems that we see in the region, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vanuatu, these are systems that are actually being developed over time and quite organically. In Thailand, the current system has evolved since 2003. In Indonesia, the current system has evolved since 2011. Vanuatu, it looks like it's 2002, if I remember correctly, which is quite amazing. Malaysia, probably around the early 2000s as well. This is evident across the world. And when we look at these projects to digitalize complex systems, what we see is trying to buy the whole solution as a turnkey often does not work. It's much better to start, build, and build on top and gradually improve those systems as countries learn more, as capacity improves, and as what the needs are more apparent. And in order to do that, it was mentioned that there's a few open source solutions. Certainly, that's an option, and then there's open standards. But it's very important to plan and prepare procurements and contract management very, very well. Yeah, so I'm going to stop there at this point. Petra, back to you. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jonathan. Round of applause. Okay, so now we have a few minutes for questions and answers. I don't see any questions in the chat, but maybe are there any questions from the room? Chacha? You.
In Belinda's presentation, first I want to just say thank you all the panelists for the very informative and inspiring presentations and perspectives, which really give a big picture about the digitalization, ID and CRVS. I have a specific question related to the gender gap mentioned in Belinda's presentation. It's quite larger than I thought. Of course, I'm sure it has something to do with the gender discrimination. Maybe you can shed some light on the particular reasons, if in your research or analysis this information is available, why there's such big 16%, if I remember, between men and women in terms of having legal identity. Thank you.
Do you want to take a? Okay. No, thank you so much for the question. Actually, that's one of the things that was quite astonishing to our team as we were looking more closely at the issue. I think it's a number of things. The first is obviously linked to discrimination. I think, you know, we'd need, I think, 85 or 300 years, I think it was, until we reach full equity. So it's a symptom of that. But it's also, I would like to maybe posit this, it's also a symptom of registration at birth, and then some of the work that some of our colleagues at UNFPA and UN Women are looking into, which is the level of healthcare that provided, the amount of data that's collected, that's gender disaggregated, etc. So I think there are a number of different competing factors. Certainly, it is an area that we certainly want to look further into because, again, it's something that took us aback. I also want to hear a little bit from Jonathan, because that particular statistic was from the World Bank. And it's something that that I was going to follow up with you on after this meeting, because it's something that would definitely be interested in looking into further.
Thanks. Petra, can I come in?
Yeah, no, and actually I was going to invite either you or Roman as well if you wanted to comment on gender, since it's so central to much of our work. So please go ahead. Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you. So it is there are some very significant gaps in countries, and for when it comes to birth registration, we very much depend on data primarily from UNICEF, and they do a very good job publishing regular data on birth registration of boys and girls under the age of 5. One thing that I want to share that I find quite interesting in this region, and I'm not going to name any countries, but we see a slightly lower rate of birth registration of children in women-headed households. That points to challenges of finding the time to go through this process. And if you look at the countries that have achieved universal birth registration, for example, like Thailand, one of the key strategies that they've used is registering at birth at the health facility or by the health worker. And I see Roman nodding. Vital Strategies promotes this in a lot of countries. I know in Rwanda, for example, they supported law reforms to enable this. I think this is a very important strategy because the health facilities or the health workers collect the same data already. So if they can get the authority to use that data for the legal registration, I think we would go a long way to addressing a lot of the barriers, including gender barriers, because one of the challenges, as I mentioned, is the time that a single mother has to take to understand how to do this, let alone to actually do this various visits to the office. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. And Roman, do you want to add anything?
Well, I probably will just repeat what has been said, but definitely it's something that we and other partners promote, is really moving from a passive system where you are expecting the population to come forward to register, to a more proactive system through this business process improvement and also digital transformation, where you will link the health and the civil registry, like a health CR link, because the health sector is in the known, of course, of most of the births that occur both in health facility and in community, but also of death in both community and facilities, which they can transmit to the CR, and you can have like a 1-step or 2-step registration. But as long as you have a notifier or an informant, which is a government who has access to those information, is going to help you to increase and to kind of also balance this out. Because if you are expecting Jonathan has been providing the example of a female-led household. But if you're expecting someone to come forward to register, most of the time it also based on a need, right? You register a birth because you need something, you register a death because you need something. And unfortunately, in a lot of society in this region, the needs are more towards the male than the female population, because inheritance for death registration will usually the man, opening a bank account often is the man, still like this, unfortunately. Like there are many other reasons, education. We need to kind of look into it in more details, but so expecting people to come forward as opposed to be more proactive in the system will help achieving that. And ESCAP is also supporting countries in conducting inequality assessment, which is not only looking into a marginalized population, but has a gender equity lens. And through that, it can also identify not only the statistic, but the barriers to registration, and try to understand, like why do we have those discrepancies between male and female registration. It could be also like that in some countries, a lot of deaths are registered when someone is coming to the hospital and die in the hospital. And it's also here again, that you will prioritize for a man to kind of be treated in a hospital because he's the bread earner, and so on and so forth. There are many reasons behind that, but thanks to those inequality assessments, to understand the reason and to also try to leverage business process and digital transformation to come to a more proactive system, you can gradually aim at solving this gap. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Romana. Thanks for mentioning the work that we're doing on the inequality assessments. I hope it's okay just to take the I know we're out of time. We have to move on to Tanya, but just to take the moderator's prerogative to actually mention also that the gender gap is also with regards to the data that's available. So we don't even know the extent to which female deaths are under-registered because we don't have that data. So it's one of those, unknown unknowns, which makes it all the more challenging. But I know that we are short on time. This discussion could go on for a very long time. I hope that we can continue afterwards, but I'll move on very quickly to Tanya, who is going to be presenting on our review of the decade and how that links with digitalization. So Tanya, over to you.
Thank you so much, Petra, and thank you for these excellent presentations from our wonderful partners. And it's always nice when partners mention our work as well. It's great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are at now and what we're going to be doing the next year and a half, because we are at the end of the Asia Pacific CRVS decade. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Back in 2014, as was mentioned by Jonathan, and I think also Belinda mentioned, the Asia Pacific CRVS decade was initiated in our region. Here we have the birth certificate. If anyone wants to see it in real life, it's in our office. And there's a few signatures from people in this room, and also Jonathan is on there, I think. But basically, countries agreed to move towards universal registration and using that data for producing biostatistics. Next slide, please. The regional goals are these 3 goals. I hope all of you know them by heart. If I wake you up in the middle of the night, you will scream, we have the 3 goals of the decade, or these are the 3 goals. And of course, this is very closely linked with digitalization. So on my next slide, I want to just highlight why we are focusing on digitalization today, and in general, why this is such an important part of the work on moving towards these 3 goals. We all know that advances in ICT really are providing significant opportunities. And for those of you who've been here this week to listening to other Commission events, it is really changing the game, right? Digitalization is changing the game for governments across the region. And when we talk about civil registration and biostatistics, these systems can really facilitate data capture, storage and exchange, and also information management. And that means that it becomes really important for digital public infrastructure, as mentioned by our excellent presentations. And some of these
issues that highlights with data sharing and confidentiality and so on has been mentioned by colleagues today as well. Yeah, so I want to really just highlight why we are doing this and then move on to this very exciting update on where we are at with the decade. So how far have we come? Well, we initiated this CRVS decade back in 2014, and countries have been submitting regular updates on their CRVS systems and how they have improved over time. We are now in 2024, which means that this is the year where members and associate members of ESCAP will submit their final report to the CRVS Secretariat, the ESCAP Secretariat. And then we will use that data for a final regional review next year. And this is the text that was in the Regional Action Framework on CRVS in Asia and the Pacific. And this is why it says final, because our regional steering group for CRVS in Asia and the Pacific has come to the realization that unfortunately we have not reached our 3 goals, which means that the regional steering group have suggested that we extend the CRVS decade to align it with the 2030 agenda. So we are currently having discussions with the regional steering group, and we expect an extension of the decade to be agreed to at the ministerial conference next year, which I will talk a little bit more about in my next slides. So when we did the baseline and the midterm report, what did we actually use those reports for? It's a lot of work to collect all of this data, and why do we do it? Well, we report to our commission, and we report to our commission regularly on CRVS improvements. And we also have our Get in the Picture website where we have country profiles. We put all of these country reports on there. And when we did the baseline back in 2015, we really struggled. I mean, I did a lot of that work and it was really hard. Most countries didn't have much idea about the completeness. They really didn't know how many people were registered or unregistered or how the systems were working or anything. So the baseline data was not great. To be honest, back in 2015, we really struggled. It was a lot better when we came to 2020 and we did the midterm review. The reports, I think, they're already gone, but some of these reports were lying up there. And we got a really much better overview of what the situation was like. We again reported to the Committee on Statistics, and we also had this report, and there's a website, and we did quite a lot of efforts in trying to spread the word about the situation in the region. It was also the foundation for the discussions that were held at the second ministerial conference on CRVS that was held in 2021. It was planned for 2020, but well, we all know what happened in 2020. So it was in 2021 where we had the ministerial conference. And what we've seen from the midterm is that a lot of this information from countries have really been used by development partners to focus their support. To identify which countries were in need of which type of support, and also to get a better understanding of what the situation is. So it has been very useful for development partners and also for countries to kind of see where they were compared to other countries. Next slide, please. So why do we conduct these reviews? I mean, obviously we have been asked to do it as part of the Regional Action Framework back in 2014, but it is really important to monitor progress. And it was really nice when we had the midterm review back in 2020 that we could really see progress, a lot of progress, in particular on birth registration, but also on death registration. And also more and more countries are producing vital statistics based on civil registration records. So there is a lot of progress. We're really looking forward to doing the review this year to see where we're at now. So this is one of the main reasons. We need to monitor the progress. We need to see where the remaining challenges are. And then we will have a ministerial conference again next year. So in June next year, we will have the 3rd ministerial conference. We're already starting preparations. As I mentioned, our regional steering group has suggested an extension of the decade. And again, we will get high-level country stakeholders there to highlight these issues, to agree on the way forward. And we know from our experience from the baseline and from the first ministerial and the second ministerial conference, that getting these high-level people together makes a difference in the countries, because the attention to these issues are very important. And I think Jonathan also mentioned that in his presentation, that there are a lot of economic benefits. There's a lot of social benefits, as Belinda also mentioned, and we need to highlight those. We need to make sure that the politicians are aware of these and put the needed resources into these systems. So this is the main reason we do a ministerial conference, to get the ministers to agree to move these issues forward. There's another couple of more reasons. We can go to the next slide, please. Again, getting this targeted development funding, getting the partners together, making sure that everyone is aware where the gaps are, who needs which kind of support. And the reviews really provide very detailed information on the situation in countries. And then, of course, we are aligning a lot of this work with the support to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we do know that we need this accurate population data. As Jonathan mentioned, statistics is not the best selling point for CRVS systems, but it's definitely one of the many good selling points for better CRVS systems. Okay, so what we will be doing for this review? Well, basically, we will send around a questionnaire to all the members and associate members of ESCAP and ask them to report on progress in achieving the goals of the Regional Action Framework for CRVS in Asia and the Pacific. Then we will compile all these country reports to another report like this, and probably a little bit more than that. And then we will have the ministerial conference in June 2025. Next slide, please. Just a quick overview about what the questionnaire looks like. There's quite a few different elements, and this is a reflection of, first of all, the complexities of CRVS systems and also of the many partners involved in this space. So there's a lot of different aspects of CRVS systems that needs to be focused on. So therefore, we have a fairly large questionnaire focusing on completeness of birth and death registration, but also looking at causes of death and the processes used for the identifying causes of death and reporting on those, and about the information and the production of vital statistics. Countries have committed to producing annual vital statistics with various other commitments, and we want to make sure that they're getting there. And then there is a set of implementation steps under the Regional Action Framework that we also ask countries to report on. So have they established CRVS coordination mechanisms? Have they done inequality assessments? And things like that. And then the Regional Steering Group have asked us to focus more in on the inequality aspects of CRVS, but also on the resilience aspect. So we have some questions around those kind of focus areas and other action areas under the Regional Action Framework. So it's a big questionnaire, and therefore, if I can go to the next slide, we also know that it's just not just one person in countries that will be able to fill it out. We send these questionnaires to our national focal points, but they will need to involve multiple ministries, particularly health, statistics, the civil registers, of course, as well. And in the countries where there are national CRVS coordination mechanisms, often they will need to be involved in this process. They may also need some support for relevant development partners, and our development partners have country presence will also be supporting countries in this process. And yeah, we do suggest that there's a meeting held in countries to kind of pull all this together. We've seen from the baseline and midterm review that in countries where that happened, there were much better questionnaires returned to us. Next step, please. We will be supporting as much as we can from here. Our partners in countries will be supporting at the country level, but we will also have, regular webinars, question and answers on our website. For the various activities we have coming up this year anyway, we will do information sharing on the questionnaires as well. We have some sub-regional civil registers networks that will meet this year, and we will do some work with them on this questionnaire. And here's a timeline, so it's a little bit small, but basically we are piloting the questionnaire right now. And then we will get it finally reviewed by our regional steering group, which is meeting in 2 weeks. And I know a few of you will be there, which is great. And then we're hoping to send out the questionnaire at the end of May, early June. And what we do is we send it to the national focal points, and then we copy in the PRs to ESCAP, the permanent representatives, the Western coordinators' offices, relevant partners, and so on. And then we know from the baseline and the midterm reviews that then we have a few months ahead of us of intense work, working with countries, following up. We will be getting questionnaires. We have to go back with questions, back and forth a few times, probably with most of the countries, and working very closely with our partners in countries as well. So we do anticipate that we will probably end up getting the questionnaires, somewhere October or something. We'll probably have questionnaires from most countries. Back in 2020, when we did the midterm review, I think we ended up with 47 countries reporting. So now the goal is even higher than that. But yeah, so when we have all these questionnaires, we will start analyzing, compiling this into regional analysis, which will then provide the basis for the discussions at the ministerial conference in June 2025. And if you don't already have it in your calendars, now is the good time to do it, 24 to 26 of June 2025. Okay, and I think I have one last slide. Yeah, so this is just what we anticipate for the census report. Obviously, it will give us a good overview of implementation of the regional action framework and provide the basis of the discussions. We anticipate that we will have a lot of information about how countries have progressed towards the targets of the regional action framework. We will look at the implementation steps, and also we will look at recommendations for countries to achieve the regional goals by 2030. And I think that was my last slide. Yep. If you don't already know everything about gettingthepicture.org, here is the website. Please go and learn more about all of these various activities from many of our great partners and ESCAP as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know that we are really behind time. Apologies for our poor time management. I know people need to rush off to the commission, so I won't hold you up any longer. Just I want to say thank you to Rachel, to Roman, to Belinda, to Jonathan, and to Tanya, and of course to all the support we've had in organising the side event, and to everyone who's participated and joined us today. We very much appreciate it. Let us know if you have any further comments or questions, or you want to continue the discussion. We'd be more than happy to talk about any of these issues and pass them on to the presenters as well. So thank you all very much, and I think we can close the session here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.